Events of the week. On Monday, Lafayette Park was cleared of protesters. You've spoken about this. The federal agents who were there reported to you. Did you think it was appropriate for them to use smoke bombs, tear gas, pepper balls, projectiles at what appeared to be peaceful protesters?
They're not peaceful protesters, and that's one of the big lies that the media seems to be perpetuating.
Three of my CBS colleagues were there. We talked to them. They did not hear warnings. They did not see
There were three warnings. There were three warnings given. But let's get back to why we took that action. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there were violent riots at Lafayette Park, where the park police were under constant attack at behind their bike rack fences. On Sunday, things reached a crescendo. The officers were pummeled with bricks. Crowbars were used to pry up the pavers at the park, and they were hurled at police. There were fires set in not only St. John's Church, but a historic building at Lafayette was burned down.
These were things that looters did.
Not looters. These were the violent rioters who were dominated Lafayette Park.
But when I'm asking about
into the
is on
Treasury
Monday,
Department,
when it was peaceful protest.
Let me get to this, because this has been totally obscured by the media. They broke into the Treasury Department, and they were injuring police. That night, Sunday night, the park police prepared a plan to clear 8th Street and put a larger perimeter around the White House so they could build a more permanent fence on Lafayette.
This is something you approved on Sunday night?
No. The park police on their own on Sunday night determined this was the proper approach. When I came in Monday, it was clear to me that we did have to increase the perimeter on that side of Lafayette Park and push it out one block. That decision was made by me in the morning. It was communicated to all the police agencies, including the Metropolitan Police, at 2 p.m. that day. The effort was to move the perimeter one block, and it had to be done when we had enough people in place to achieve that. And that decision, as I say, was communicated to the police at 2 p.m. The operation was run by the park police. Mm-hmm. The park police was facing what they considered to be a very rowdy and non-compliant crowd, and there were projectiles being hurled at the police. And at that point, it was not to respond.
On Monday, you're saying there were projectiles.
On Monday, yes, they were.
As I'm saying, three of my colleagues were there. Yeah. They did not see projectiles being thrown.
I was there. I was there. They were thrown. I saw them thrown.
And you believe that what the park police did, using tear gas and projectiles, was appropriate?
Here's what the media is missing. This was not an operation to respond to that particular crowd. It was an operation to move the perimeter one block.
And the methods they used, you think, were appropriate? Is that
when they met resistance, yes. They announced 3 times. They didn't move. By the way, there was no tear gas used. The tear gas was used Sunday when they had to clear 8th Street to allow the fire department to come in to save St. John's Church. That's when tear gas was used.
They were chemical irritants, the park.
No, they were not chemical irritants. Pepper spray is not a chemical irritant. It's not chemical.
Pepper spray, you're saying, is what was used.
Pepper balls.
Right. And you believe that was appropriate. What I want to show you is what a lot of people at home who are watching this on television saw and their perception of events. I want you to see what the public at home saw.
President of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters. But in recent days, our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others. A number of state and local governments.
So while the president is saying that he appreciates peaceful protests,
innocent people have been savagely beaten.
Around the same time,
like the young man.
Well, 6 minutes difference.
Right. Around the same time,
a woman in upstate New York.
the area is being cleared of what appear to be peaceful protesters using some force. And after the speech is finished, the president then walks out of the White House to the same area where the protesters had been and stands for a photo op in front of the church where the protesters had been. These events look very connected to people at home. In an environment where the broader debate is about heavy.
Let's back up for a second real quick. I want to weigh in on something real quick, where the president is standing there holding a Bible. There's been all kinds of criticism and complaints about the president holding the Bible up and not reading out of the Bible. There's been complaints about the president holding up the Bible and the Bible being upside down. There's been all sorts of criticism towards him doing all of this just to make a photo op in front of this church that I guess the day before, the night before, or previous to this, had been vandalized substantially and going through all kinds of violent hostility protests. My opinion about anybody that holds up the Word of God is making a symbolical, silent statement the same way as you would be if you had a necklace around your neck and you had a cross on your neck. Or you put a bumper sticker on your car that says you're a believer. My opinion about what the president done was nothing any less or more substantial than that in and of itself towards making a silent symbolical statement that he is a believer in God. He is a believer in the Word of God, and he believes the whole Bible to its fullest appeal. And once more, the Bible preaches before the end of time. It does say that things will wax worse and worse and worse over in the book of Daniel that will occur during the 7-year tribulation period. We're not there yet. God hasn't come back and resurrected the saints pertaining to the second coming yet. Things will wax worse and worse during that tribulation period. But as of right now, it teaches that there will be utopia and peace. And if the president, I believe, was doing anything, he was trying to validate and verify by standing there holding the Bible. He probably didn't realize it was upside down. He was trying to validate and verify that according to the Bible, we are to do things orderly and peacefully and not be disruptive in bringing violence into our streets. I'm pretty sure at this particular point in time, he was pretty upset. He was disappointed. He was heartbroken. And I'm not trying to stand up for the president, because the president has made some incredible mistakes in his presidency. There's no doubt. But at the same time, I'm smart enough to look and see where this president inherited a mess before it ever got to this point. He inherited a system that was already broken. That's the reason why my brother and I put out the broken cross, because the cross represents the system. The cross don't represent your salvation. It was the person that hung on the cross that represents your salvation. The cross itself represents the system, because that's the way that they impugnated punishment back then, was by hanging people on the cross. The same way today, as we strap them in an electric chair or strap them down on a gurney and intravenously give them poison and put them to sleep that way. But if the president was doing anything, he was doing something very courageous by coming out into the eyes of the public like that and making this silent symbolical statement. It wasn't a prop. The president's not a preacher. The president's not a minister. The president's not an evangelist. He's not even a theologian. But he is a believer. And because he's a believer, his belief isn't any less or more important than anybody else's, because once more, we're all equal in the eyes of God. And to think that that institution and behind him, that church, got ravagely vandalized the day or the night before, just absolutely is sickening to me, that any group, I don't care what group it is, would be willing to do that to a church building. A church building where people worship and where people come together in a gathering.
The protesters had been. These events look very connected to people at home. In an environment where the broader debate is about heavy-handed use of force and law enforcement, was that the right message for Americans to be receiving?
Well, the message is sometimes communicated by the media. I didn't see any video being played on the media of what was happening Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All I heard was comments about how peaceful the protesters were. I didn't hear about the fact that there were 150 law enforcement officers injured and many taken to the hospital with concussions. It was
In a case-by-case basis, in all fairness, maybe it was a bit of police force brutality by moving everybody out, but like they're talking about, there was all kinds of signs of violence and people being hurt and property being destroyed during that whole event.
It wasn't a peaceful protest. We had to get control over Lafayette Park, and we had to do it as soon as we were able to do that.
But you understand how these events appear connected.
Well, it's the job of the media to tell the truth. They were not
Well, this
connected.
is what I'm asking you. Did you know when you gave the green light for these actions to be taken that the president was going to be going to that very same area for a photo op?
I gave the green light at 2 o'clock. Obviously, I didn't know that the president was going to be speaking later that day.
You had no idea?
No, I did not.
Do you...
The go-ahead was given at 2 o'clock, and to do it as soon as we were able to do it. To move the perimeter from H Street to I Street.
We're both Catholic. I know you're observant, you're a devout Catholic. Archbishop Gregory of Washington condemned what happened by gassing peaceful protesters.
There was no gassing.
Is what we saw there doing what you meant when you were on that call with governors and you said to dominate the streets? Is that what law enforcement is supposed to be taking away from this?
No, on the contrary. My point to the governors and what I was saying was